Hi, welcome to session 3 of Avantico's Dynamics 365 Finance Automation webinar series on advanced bank reconciliation. My name is Aaron Klein. I'm the marketing manager here at Avantico, and with me today is our featured speaker for this session, D365 finance consultant Greg Griffith. Now, like I said, today's session focuses on Microsoft D365's Advanced Bank Reconciliation module. In this session, you'll discover how to leverage new features for generating customer payments directly from bank statements, speed up your reconciliation with automated matching rules, and enhance your confidence in bank balances and cash forecasting through prompt account reconciliations. Now, Greg's going to break down the full session agenda momentarily, but before he does, I just wanted to remind you about some of the past recorded webinars that we have available for on-demand viewing. Of course, there are 2 previous sessions in this series covering credit and collections and AP automation. And there's a Microsoft support series exploring everything from one version updates, Dynamics 365 licensing and Azure best practices, and system performance optimization. We also then have a series diving into the functions and benefits of Avantico's D365 Finance and Supply Chain ISV solutions, the 3PL Automation Cloud, the Advanced Multi-Company Solution, and the Data Migration Accelerator. I'll place a link to the webinar to our webinar recording library here shortly. But yeah, with that, Greg, if you would like to take it away, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. That's your presenter. And so Aaron, I think just kind of read this already, but this is our agenda. So it's an intro to the Advanced Bank Reconciliation module. Microsoft has recently put new features in. We used to have 3 action types on reconciliation clearing rules, and now we have I forget right now, it's 8 or 9, but they have more than doubled the type of actions available on the automated clearing rules. So I will look at we'll talk briefly about the various import methods that exist around the world. BAI and BAI2 is the one we're going to focus on. That's the one for North America, US and Canada. And then so with the new rule types, and we'll talk about the old rule types too, but with the new rule types, we'll talk about adding transactions to the ledger, to the accounting system through the advanced banking rules. Briefly about rule sets or groups of rules, and then topics include finalizing reconciliations and handling reversals. We'll also have time for Q&A at the end. You can type questions in at the chat at any time. If one of my Avantico team wants to bring the question in, that's fine. And then Aaron already discussed the benefits of attending. And so I'll keep going with PowerPoint a little bit, then we'll do demo, and then we'll do Q&A. So let's talk about the new matching rule types. So this is a screen where we have matching rules because we all like to automate as much as possible, though we still can't automate everything. They wouldn't need us anymore if everything was automated, right? But we still need somebody to push the button and think things through and check things out. We still need people. But on action types, okay, 1, 2, 3, there are 6 new action types. So let me talk about those briefly. One is to mark new transactions is an old one, but then clear bank reversal bank transactions is a new one. Generate customer payments, and this would be an on account basis. Generate a customer payment where it may be multiple invoices. We just need to settle it on. We need to bring the payment in first on account, and then we'll settle against individual invoices. Same thing with the vendor payment. We may have it identified already, and we can make rules like that, but in general, we would generate the vendor payment, put it on account to a specific vendor, and then settle up against specific invoices after the fact. The bank statements themselves are somewhat limited in the information they can convey, but the European standard is more like an XML. It has tags. I have not worked with that other than to see what it is and how it works. But I would imagine there's some possibilities there that may not exist with the US BAI standard. Then we can generate a voucher. This is where we're not going to run it through a customer ledger or a vendor ledger, but we can generate a voucher direct to general ledger based on the information that we do have. And then when we do have ability to identify the customer and identify the invoice, and it's just one invoice, like a one-to-one, we can settle the customer invoice through these new action types. So we have these are the rules we have. This is the setting we'll be in for matching rules. There is a setup and configuration, and if we had extra time, I can show some of the setup and configuration behind the scenes, but I'm not going to start with that at this point. But briefly talking about it, we have transaction codes on the bank statement side, which align with transaction types on the GL side. We have the new action. We have the new rules, and then we group the rules. They're in a rule set. We have cash and bank parameters on the individual bank account. We don't get the ABR or the automatic bank reconciliation automatically. We have to say yes to allow it. And we have to kind of, if there were bank transactions in the past, we kind of have to treat those like we sum them up. We treat them like an outstanding check or an outstanding deposit, and we, reconcile the past to get ourselves to a true up to where we start with the first bank statement. But in this example today, I'm just going to start clean with a zero opening balance on a new bank account. And then and like I said, each bank account must be individually activated individually to use the ABR. Bank statement formats. This was on the agenda where we said we would talk about these. So Microsoft has connectors for these file layouts for the BAI2, which is North America. BAI is a Bank Administration Institute standard. This is BAI2. It's been around for several decades. It's used by nearly all the major US banks and also by some smaller banks. One file can include a bank statement for more than one bank account. One file can also include bank statements for more than one day. It comes in with essentially 5 bank statements a week, for the 5 weekdays, and then no bank statements for the weekend days. It's been around for a while. And then MT940 is used by most of the rest of the world. So I've seen it be used Central America. I've seen it used India. It's the standard. And then Europe is seems to have some variations, but the most prominent standard is the CAMT053, which is a variation of XML and uses an ISO 20022 standard. That one has a lot of tags, so it can be a little more. It looks a lot more precise. With the BAI, there is a description field and it's the same layout, it's the same fields, but there's a description field, and the different banks can use that description field differently. Any comments, any questions at this point? I can keep going forward. Okay. The BAI transactions, they're essentially divided into credits and debits. Credits are, it's a little bit the opposite of the way it is on the general ledger. The general ledger, when cash comes in, that's a debit transaction, but on the bank statement, cash coming in is a credit transaction. So these are the credit transactions that were used in preparing for this, though we won't see all in the demo. And for debits, these are the transaction types that were used. If you go on Google, you can find the BAI2 document from the BAI Institute. But you can also find individual banks that have done some of their own individual user guides, or to how the bank statement is used and how they how they used, which transaction types they use for certain situations and things like that. So the ones that are sort of more common might be like if we're in the U.S. where checks are still used coming in, like a lockbox deposit or a 165, which would be like an electronic payment coming in. In some cases, the BAI bank statements are paired, like an operating account and a payroll account, a zero balance account, and you'd see money transfers going in and out between the two accounts. Then you can have different types of reversals and zero balance account credits. Then on the debit side, we often see checks paid or some of these ACH debits, like a direct deposit debits, things like that.
Greg, there's a quick question from Adam about do bank statements need to be in Excel or PDF formats?
The bank statements are normally in a text file. So Microsoft will adapt, does have a DMF, data management framework, DMF templates for bringing it in. They also have a user interface way to bring bank statements. But most typically, once you're in production with your bank, they will send you a text file, and all three formats, the BAI2, the MT940, and the CAMT, the European standard, they all come in as a text file. But if you wanted to bring it in as Excel, you would have to kind of format into the type of Excel that Microsoft would accept for one of their import standards. So that's about what I can say on that question, at least for now. Yeah. Okay, so now we'll move to the demo. So when we go in to the cash and bank module, if we collapse it down briefly, we see that we have a bank accounts. We have a section on the menu for bank account reconciliation. And then there is on the setup section, there is a section for the advanced bank rec setup. So where we have, this is where we like for the bank formats like BAI2, we can have some mapping between the bank statement transaction codes and the GL transaction codes. We have our matching rules, and we have rule sets, which are essentially groups of matching rules. So this demo is going to focus today on kind of running one rule at a time. But if you get all the rules kind of smoothed out, you know they're good, you know they work, and you want to reconcile real fast, I mean, there may still always be some level of a manual, matching between the bank statement and the GL transactions. But to clear things out and get down to the ones that need to be done manually, you would just run a set of rules and let them all run and clear your transactions out. I'll go up to the bank accounts view, show that. In the bank accounts, I'm using this last one here. I created some extra bank accounts, kind of doing test transactions in different settings and reconciling more than once some existing bank transactions and getting to a true up to start to be able to use ABR. And then on this account, you need to on the bank statement itself, at least the BAI, you need the routing number and the account number. In this case, I have each bank account as its own main account or GL account. And then down in the reconciliation section, you have to turn on this yes for advanced bank reconciliation, and you have to designate the format, and you have to have the name here in this field match the name on the bank statement. At least I've gotten error messages when it doesn't match up. And you also have to kind of like we'll see. So if I go from this context of the bank account, then I can go into first. There's like a bank statement area, and then when I got the bank statement in, I have you do the reconciliation, and when we have everything matched out of the bank statement and matched against the GL. We may still have some outstanding items on the on the GL side. We may have, or the bank transaction side, we may have some transactions that didn't come, unclear checks or something that haven't come through in the bank statement yet. But when we have everything matched from the bank statement, then we're ready to close out the reconciliation. And you have views of the all banks transactions together, the reconciled transactions, the unreconciled transactions. So if I go up to bank reconciliations right now, I have a reconciliation started, but I'm going to just delete it. Okay, I'm gonna have to clear it out. Just a second. So I go into my bank account. I'm going to go in through the ABR2. I'm going to go into my bank statement, and I'm going to go into my reconciling worksheet. I have some things already matched, but I'm going to just unmatch all. Now that they're unmatched, I should be able to come delete, and we can just start from the beginning. I need to reopen this. Let's see, this is the bank statement view. Just a second, through the bank account. I kind of meant to reset this earlier, but okay. The bank reconciliation and then delete. Now it'll delete. The bank statements, I have to reopen, and I will delete. Okay, so now we are back to the beginning. Here's my bank account. I'm going to go into bank statement, and I'm going to go to import the bank statement. So I have to designate the bank account. This is not a situation where I'm going to import a statement that has multiple bank accounts in it. It only has one bank account, but those situations do exist. And if they exist, you put that to yes. And then my bank statement is the BAI2. I'm going to browse from my file, which is this one right here, and hit upload, and then hit OK. All right, that brings my bank statement in. You can see I have an opening balance and an ending balance, and I have the date back a few days. And I have to go through a validate and confirm process to make sure the bank statement is clean and compliant. And if I had a previous bank statement and I had any, I can overwrite this. Like, let's say 1019. My previous statement was 1018 or something like that. I usually have to do this manual step. I haven't found a way around this manual step, but I have to more or less set a from date and a to date. The to date comes in manually because it's in the bank statement. The from date I have to kind of put in manually, but it's usually that's pretty quick, just to go from like 19 to 18, 12 a.m., 12 a.m., right? There are things for time zones adjustments. But I've got it, set between what the bank statement has and the time zone settings that comes in as 12 a.m. So if you are running a to date of 1019, all your bank transactions would be 1018. All your bank transactions or your date of activity that's represented would generally be 1018 or earlier. So anyway, I'm going to go validate and confirm. There's the validate, and then the message detail, I think it's going to tell me there is no bank statement before 1018. Yep, but it passes the validation. And then if I had previous bank statements, it wouldn't give me that message because it knows it was all good. There's no gaps. There's no gaps in the minutes and seconds, right? That would be if we had a lot of bank statements previously done, and then go confirm. If there's time at the end, I could go to another bank account and show you what it looks like with multiple bank statements. Okay, so I have my bank statement in and processed. My ending balance is a little bit over $2 million. I'm going to go now to the reconciliation worksheet. So this will now create a reconciliation item. So I go to bank reconciliation and I go to new, and it creates a statement entity, and I'm going to go into the worksheet. And there are printouts available for the bank statement and for the reconciliation statement when we're done. The statement could be printed already. So now we have transactions we kind of have a left and a right. We can kind of move this divider around. But between left and right, we have the bank statement transactions on the left and the bank transactions on the right. And everything is in the unmatched category. We're trying to get everything into the matched category. So let's go look at and then we're done. We're going to have a workflow to approve it before we settle it. And when we want to run matching rules, we can use this to run one at a time, but let's look at bank matching rules first. So here are the reconciliation matching rules. And the first one I'm going to do that'll just clear some things off is this one for match with bank document. So this is a basic match. It is just matching off amount, document numbers, payment references. This does not create any GL transactions. This assumes that the GL and the bank transactions and the bank statement transactions, I think is the right terminology. The bank, because the bank is a subledger in D365 F&O. So it's whenever there's a bank transaction, there's a corresponding GL transaction, but I should call them bank transactions and bank statement or bank statement lines or bank statement transactions. I'm trying to match those two up. So if I go and these rules can be deactivated or activated, this one's activated. So if I go back into I'll go through the bank account. I like to kind of come this way through the ABR2 account, through the bank statement, and back into the reconciliation. And now if I'm going to go run a matching rule, I can run a rule set, which can be multiple rules at a time, or I can run one matching rule. So I'll run this one rule that I already talked about, the MWBD, the kind of the generic match that's ever out there without too many parameters on it. And we'll go okay. And we'll go okay. And it tells me up here on this blue line, 3 statement lines have been matched according to this rule. Actually, if I ran a matching rule set and I had 12 rules in there, then it would actually give me 12 of these blue lines. I'd have to kind of do a drop down, but I'd have 12 of these matching blue lines that would tell me, which ones had matches, and so some statement lines have been matched, and which ones did not find matches. So you'd have like a 0 there or a message. But right now when we run one rule at a time, you will just see one blue line up there. But we did match 3. So now if I go look at my match transactions, you will see I had to fund the bank account. I had $2 million go in as like an equity partner type investment. Then I have I have a 3,400 on a 165 transaction code, which is a credit. It's money coming in on an ACH, and then it's matched to that's the 3,400, and it's matched to a little bit different of a code. It's matched to an O2. It's called on the bank transaction type. It's called an O2, but it matches with the 165 on the bank transaction code. And I will just later on, if I go deeper into configuration, I can show you where that mapping is between the two. Show some examples. Now on the and then on this 475, that is a simple check payment on the. It's more like the AP side. So we got 3 transactions matched off of one roll. And for automation, it gets a little bit of a ooh and a ah because, it's automated, it works, it matched up 3, and we don't have to manually match those. I could actually, let's say I was going to unmatch this. If I wanted to mark and unmatch that $2 million one, I'm just going to show the manual match on that. Right, we could come back in here, reconcile in worksheet, and we would match manually on the left, manually on the right, click our match button, and that would be the manual way to match. And so now I am back on the match transactions, back to having 3 match transactions. So now I have to look for more that I can come up with some rules on to these bank transactions on the right are generally outstanding items. Not necessarily on the bank statement. I think we'll have to, and then these on the left are things that maybe are in the bank statement, but they're not in the bank transactions at all. But with the help of these new rules from Microsoft, we can create automated transactions. So one transaction on the left is this bank fee. So if I have this is a fairly simple rule, and this rule, we can now do a transaction for this. So let's go to the rules. Go to my reconciliation matching rules, and if I go to bank fee, I say as long as that description begins with bank, and the transaction code is 698, then in my parameter, I'm going to operate this in the USSI legal entity. Then I'm going to generate a voucher. And if I go into if I deactivate the rule briefly, so I can look at it, down here on voucher parameters and financial details, I have a drop down for how to do the date on the accounting date. But I have my bank, I have a 698. Here's my ledger account. I'm going to put it to a 600, 150, which is like a miscellaneous expense. But the description I'm going to put on the journal is bank charges. No tax on this transaction, at least in the US, no tax. Maybe Europe would or something. And then the business unit there is part of your financial dimension. So it gives you this setup here to designate account, sales tax groups, and financial dimensions. So that's good. I'm going to just show the rule. I'm going to reactivate. I want to make sure my description begins with the word bank. I'm going to go back into the bank reconciliation. There may be a faster way to navigate that, but that's the one that's just worked for me. And now I have this bank. Okay, so I do have a description. It starts with the word bank, so it should find a match. So now if I go up to run a matching rule, and I pick the rule instead of this general purpose one there, I pick the one for the 698 bank fees. Now I can go to the OK button. And we have a match. We have one statement line has been matched. And so now that has, if I go over to my match transactions tab, I now see 4 transactions matched. And if I went out to Audit Trail and GL, I think I will go there. If I go to Audit Trail, well, I have to go through favorites. Audit Trail, and go look at voucher transactions. It hasn't come through. I know it's in the subledger. I think it's in the GL subledger. So let me go through my favorites and the subledgers. And yeah, it's do the transfer now. Back to Audit Trail. Back to that at the bottom. And go look at voucher transactions. There's my transaction to the 600-150 account for the 1495 for the description bank charges. It came through on its own. And, I wouldn't, if I, this time I'm showing it to show the kind of some of the details behind it, but if it was already there, you would put that bank charges rule into a rule set. You would just kind of run it and it would run automatically in the background. You wouldn't have to kind of look at it, think about it, because it'd be there automated and ready to go. Yeah, I'll come back into my account, bank statement. And so the next steps here are sort of more of the same, but I'm going to try and show examples of the different roles. So just a second here. So now the next rule that I want to run, there's one for adventure services. Now this is a case where, okay, it's coming in and there is more than one invoice on it. So you maybe get a remittance advice that's going to tell you about more than one invoice. And this one is I think the amount, $9,000. So I have 2 invoices that add up to that $9,000 amount. So I have a rule for adventure services. So some of these rules are vendor specific or customer specific because the bank statement isn't going to give you the customer account number, the customer ID number that you use in your system. So when I make a rule specific to a specific customer or vendor, I am counting upon the bank formatting it this way in that description field to be able to identify that it's adventure services. So I go into this rule and, stop me or let me know if there's any questions out there. So if I go into the reconciliation matching rule for adventure services, so I see that the description begins with adventure services. So that differentiates it from adventure enterprises or any other word, but there could be more than one out there. So there is some, you have to kind of get confidence in these rules that they're precise enough that they're going to work, right? And so there for adventure services, when I create my automatic bank transaction and GL entries, there is the customer account number, right? You wouldn't expect that. That's only the customer account number at the USSI company, Contoso Consulting USA. That is not anything that the bank would normally have to pass to you. So that's why you need to kind of have a way to kind of look this up. And then the action here is one of the new actions, generate customer payment. It's an active rule. So I'm going to go back into my reconciliation again. And now I'm going to run the one rule for adventure services. I'm going to run it, wait for the blue bar, And instead of telling me one, well, it just tells me the rule is executed. It didn't give me a count this time. But the matching rule is executed. So now if I actually go to match transactions, I will go from essentially I'm up to 5 rows. So I have 5, which includes this new one for $9,000. And now I have to, if I want to, if I go into my, let's see, I want to go look at the audit trail, make sure it's there. I'll go in the subledger, make sure it's gone from there, right? I go to the audit trail. At least this is how I like to do it. Recent audit trail. The customer payment, we go look at the voucher transactions. We can turn on the transaction origin and you see the 2 lines of general ledger, but in 2 subledger lines. So you have the bank got an increase of $9,000 in cash assets, and the customer account got credited for $9,000 for that payment. So now if so it is an on account. It does not necessarily settle at this point. We have another rule that will settle. So if I go into Adventure Services just to show the settlement process, so you may already know that, I'll show it. There's the customers. I have to look for Adventure Services. Here's Adventure Services. I go up to my invoice and my, I have to look for settlement, collect, settle transactions. So here's my customer transactions, and I have the $9,000 credit that I just got coming through from the bank statement, because maybe I never did get a remittance advice. So I didn't really know it was there till the bank statement came through. And now I have this $1,000 and $8,000 transaction. So against 2 different invoices, like a N21 and N22. So I post those off and they will no longer be open customer transactions. And they're all settled off now. So that is how another one of those rules. And we have a rule like that on the vendor side too. Let me go back through bank accounts. Statements, reconcile. Okay, so now we have what other scenarios do we have? Let me look at the rules quickly. If I was going to do a rule from scratch, I would kind of show a little bit what that looks like. Cash and bank, though I have shown some of that a bit already. So now I have a rule for, if I went totally new on a new rule, I would see that I have these actions. And I have the, there's actually 8 of them. So these first 3 are the ones that have been around the longest. None of these will create bank transactions. They will mark transactions, but they will not record transactions. But these will well, clear a reversal, but generate a customer payment like the on account that we just saw, generate a vendor payment like we just saw, generate a GL voucher like we did with the bank charge, and settle a customer invoice. So that it really is the one that the vendor payment works like the customer payment, kind of an on account situation. But sometimes we want to settle a customer invoice, don't really need to put it through a, let's say a storage locker rental that you pay. Well, that would be that's on the vendor side. But you have a customer invoice that you want to settle. And there are situations where that, if the bank is giving you that information, then you could potentially settle the customer invoice. So I have a rule over here And then when you pick these different rules, it will change the criteria here. And so when you have, and it gives you a little warning about it. So if you're going to try and do a settled transaction, it says this configuration will be cleared. Do you want to proceed? You say, okay. And then you see what happened in here. It got changed out. So they give you different criteria when you set up different types of rules. Okay, so now I have a transaction already set up for settlement. And then if I have a transaction where it's a 165, which is like an ACH coming in from a customer, and my invoice is equal to the document number from the bank statement, then I will get matches, and I may get more than one, and it will settle off those invoices. So now let me try and run the 165 settle. So I'll go back, and I'm just in this demo, I'm just doing one rule at a time. And I would go into the bank account. Okay, and now I'm going to run a matching rule, and I'm going to run the 165 settle. Now this, before the demo, I tested this rule in a different bank account. I have not tested it against this scenario because transactions get booked, and then you have less data to settle against. So, but I will see where this goes. Let's go settle, and we have 0 statement lines have been matched against it. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to match that one up. I missed something there, but I did have it running beforehand. So now, of course, let's go back and look here again. Let me see what else we have. 165s here. So I only had one 165, and it had a bank statement transactions. It has an invoice number there for an free text invoice, FTI, but it did not have the document number filled in. So that got maybe missed because I'm not using like somebody's real data on the bank statement that I brought in. I made this bank statement myself. I'm going to take a brief, I'm going to do let's see. I'm going to briefly show the bank statements, the BAI bank statement. So I'm going to go through here and through here, and I'm going to bring this on the screen. This is what the kind of the U.S. Canadian bank statement, you have, it's just text, right? And this is a decades old type standard. So my invoice for this, well, Adventure Services, that did work, and that was a 165 matched to a specific vendor name. Then the other 165 I had was Catalog Store, and I forgot to, I didn't put the, or I put the, I put a payment reference rather than an invoice number in here, but that needed, if I had put an invoice number in here, this is the field that you have where you can kind of put a match numbers for matching. But anyway, that would have been the Catalog Store, the 3400, and I would have been able to match it up. So anyway, you have kind of like 3 header records where you identify the account, have the date, put the date in there. These times, because the time zones will match up to the to midnight, what currency you're in, bank account number, and then you have control totals in here. The beginning balance is 0, the ending balance of that 2,000,007, and then these different transaction types. You kind of have a 88s are like continuation records because in the old days, like pre-Y2K, you only had like 80 characters. So these are wraparound lines, these 88 lines. And then, so all these 16 records are the different debit and credit transaction codes. The 115 and the 165s are credits or money coming in. The 395 is a reversal transaction or money coming back in. And then the 455 is is money going out. Now, these are transactions that you might run every month, and you don't really have an invoice from the customer. They just want you to pay for your public storage, your store and lock, Prairie View storage, or whatever the vendor is. Right? You've got a storage locker, and this is a 455 rule. And then you have the Verizon Mobile. Maybe you get it every month, and maybe Verizon hits you, like my personal cell phone, right? I don't pay that much on a cell phone bill, but I pay my Verizon bill, and it's a direct debit, right? It comes in. If the invoicing is all electronic, I might or might not on my personal accounts, frankly, look at it or not. Same thing on here on a company account. If it comes in as a direct debit, and you don't necessarily need to record the invoice as a separate transaction, you could run it as a GL transaction. Would not even run through the Verizon vendor account. And you could take this, and with a rule, you could book it as a GL transaction. You just charge it to telephone expense and an account. Bank fee is bank fee. 475 is a check payment, so that's just a check clearing. That 151, and then like your payroll. If your first payroll is going out is 35,000, you might again book that off of an automated entry, and not have the entry. Maybe you have the entry on the GL side, in which case you can run on the matching roll left and right. But if there is no GL entry and you want the bank statement to generate it for you, then you would basically set up a 455 rule, look for the description of ADP, and be able to generate an automatic transaction off of this in the bank statement. And then these are control totals, just to make sure that your file has data integrity and that the beginning and the transactions and the end all add up to what they should add up to. We would get different totals here if we had more than one bank statement per day or more than one bank account. Then you could end up with more than one number 2 or number 3 records and more than one 98 and like 49 and 98 records if you had more than one date or more than one bank account in there. Yep.
Yeah, we had a quick question from Dorothy. It was
okay.
It's in the chat, but the basic question is the entire advanced bank reconciliation works if they have the right side in quotes in journals, correct? Or another way to word it was how can we read a remittance that should help reconcile multiple invoices in one statement line?
I'm just maybe I got a word behind that or something. Can you say the last sentence there?
How can they read a remittance that should help reconcile multiple invoices in one statement line?
Okay, so if they have multiple invoices, as far as I know, the bank statements cannot convey multiple invoices. So you're going to have to do an on-account type transaction like I showed, and then go into settlement and settle the multiple invoices. But you could record the payment itself, the bank transaction for the cash, and then the customer transaction to credit the customer account for the payment. You can book that automatically from the bank statement. You just can't settle at the level of individual invoices. You'd have to do that one manually. And hopefully you'd have a matchup. So if you have a $9,000 payment come in, it matches up against the $8,000 and the $1,000 invoice, right? So, or you have a remittance statement so that even if there are partial payments on some invoices, you know how to apply the cash.
Dorothy, this is Brandon Nash. I'm one of the solution architects with Avantiico, that works alongside with Greg. Your question about the remittance reconciling multiple invoices in one statement line, are you referencing the example that Greg was talking about where you would have multiple invoices and you're using kind of the settle customer invoice function to have like the payment settle those multiple invoices that are like associated with a customer record?
Yeah, something along this line. I just wonder how the remittance that we get is processed in this entire reconciliation process? Do we read it, or is that something apart that we read manually and then it helps us to sort out what matches what?
Yeah.
It seemed to
So
me from what I heard is that the remittance is something apart. It's not part of the electronic process, automated process. Is that correct?
so it should come in
I'd say that's
depending on.
correct in the US. Now, in Europe might could be different. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, because it could. I mean, it just depends on this, like what is the detail in your statement. So depending
Mhm.
on the detail that comes into your statement, that's where you would configure.
Yeah, but
Greg, go ahead.
mhm.
Go ahead, Greg.
I could see that we have, say, 5 million in a line, and we
Mhm.
see that we got 5 million on our bank account. It's in the bank statement, and then we get a remittance of 3 pages, and the total of the remittance is the 3 million. So, but it's just a question if there is already a link that explodes, if you want, the total amount into the lines that the remittance support provides. But
Yeah.
Greg, you said in the US, no. It's something we have to follow the process that you did. You showed us the 9,000 composed of 8 and 1,000, right?
Splits into the $8,000 and the $1,000
Yeah.
invoices, right?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Thank you. And just a stupid question, maybe from a European perspective, the left side on your so the screen shows now a couple of functions, but then underneath we have left side and right side. And the right side numbers come from various journals. Is that correct? Yep. This what you had on the just simply the right side that you had.
Sorry, let me bring it back up. Yeah.
Left is the bank statement. Sorry for this stupid question, but
No problem.
if I
Yeah,
and
left
the right
left
hand,
is the
yeah.
left is the bank statement transactions, and right is the
Yep.
bank transactions. Yeah.
But I don't have bank transactions so far. This is what the journals give me, or what I put into journals. That bank transactions that wait to be posted or to be reconciled here, right?
Well, there may be a timing difference, right? So to maybe tomorrow's bank statement, these got into the bank through AP or AR transactions, and then on tomorrow's bank statement, that may come through, and then I'm down to maybe, now if the U.S. is still
Okay.
using checks, I think Europe is not using checks, right? But so they can take some time to clear.
Okay. So this is already posted on the bank.
Already posted on the bank side, waiting for it to come through on the bank transactions. This side is sort of the opposite. It's already through on the bank statement, and we're waiting for it to come through on the bank transactions. Or we have to use a rule to generate the bank transaction.
Yeah. Thank you. Great. Thank you very much.
Looks like one more question in chat is these bank transactions, was that a question? Or these are bank transactions for main account in D365. Maybe that's just a statement clearing it related to the question or the conversation at hand. Yeah.
Now there is a, if I mention Microsoft has their, they do webinars themselves. So they did I don't know if it's a tech talk on advanced bank rec a few months back. So they used a European bank statement, but then there's a Microsoft layer that comes down through a repository, through a Dataverse repository. Now Microsoft's updated that repository. So when that bank statement comes through, it still has to kind of parse out or interpret the bank statement. So they were talking about things that Microsoft still needed to be able to parse out of the European bank statement, but I agree the European bank statement has a different way of going about some of these things. So Microsoft had a roadmap to be able to parse more things out of the European format, and then I have to work with what Microsoft parses out of this bank statement and how the different banks use the description field or the places they can put a payment reference or an invoice number.
But this could already be a solution for the US. Thank
This
you.
is a solution for the US, yeah. But it could be, but if we use the, if we can also bring in a European bank statement with the translation file that you download from Microsoft, and that same interface will work with European bank statements, and that Microsoft webinar shows that.
Perfect.
All right.
Yeah. Any other
Did we do-
questions for Greg? If you guys, you can pop them in the chat, or you can feel free to take yourself off mute. But otherwise, you know, if there are no further questions, we'll wait for a second. But well, thank you guys all for attending. Thank you, Greg, for that wonderful presentation, breakdown and demonstration of advanced bank reconciliation. Just a reminder, we'll be sending out a recording of all of the sessions from this series here in the next few days. Hopefully before the end of the week, you should see that in your inbox. And if you'd like to, you know, if you have any other like finance automation modules or things you'd love to see webinars on, don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know, and keep an eye out for future webinars that we'll have coming up through the tail end of Q4 and then moving into 2025. But appreciate your time, and hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of the day.